Hello. Some of you may have wondered where I have been. Did my back explode upon collapsing? No. But I did manage to acquire another medical problem. As if breaking my back wasn't enough, several months ago I started having some serious eye irritation issues. On the worst of days, my eyes just kept on hurting. And actually, maybe my back issues indirectly led to this, because it led to me spending copious amounts of time staying still, trying to minimize my back pain, thus spending unreasonable amounts of time continuously staring at a computer screen. But don't worry, I have been seeing a doctor about that too, and now that's also gradually getting better. Like my back. But anyway, for a while back when I was looking to occupy more of my day with activities that didn't require me to use my eyes or my back, I listened to the entirety of the last 30 Eurovision Song Contests. Every single song. All 1,029 of them. It was an odyssey, and I thought that since I embarked on a journey to comprehensively listen to them, I might as well jot down my favorites. In fact, I decided to use the Eurovision point system to mark my top 10 favorite songs from each year, and further deliberated on what were my favorite songs overall, which I will go through at some point in this probably far too long video. If you know me, you'd probably guess that my musical tastes are very different from Eurovision's, and you'd be correct, but we'll further talk about this. Now, you might be asking, if you're just listening to the songs, what about the visual performance? It's true, I only viewed the visual performance of a small number of songs after the fact, and I'm making the visual performance a non-factor in my evaluations of the songs, unlike presumably nearly all of Eurovision's audience. But also, I think this is how it should be, you know. Here's a bold take. A song contest should be about music. I'm not trying to say visual performances are not of value. They could even be the highlight of a musical act. But what I'm saying is, in something called a song contest, visual elements should just be viewed as an add-on. The focus should be on the quality of the music. I'm only here to rate the music. How much I enjoyed the experience of listening to each song. Here's how this video will be structured. First, we're going to introduce Eurovision, discuss it in general, and talk about its structure and history. If you're already familiar with the history of Eurovision and just want to hear my opinions, well, these videos have chapters. You can skip to the next part. Then I'm going to go through the Eurovision winner of each year and my top pick for each year. Next, I'm going to do a top 30. I'll talk about which of the 1,029 songs I went through were my 30 favorite and why I liked them so much. And after that, I'm going to tally up points per country and see which country's music I tended to enjoy the most, and compare it with Eurovision results and talk about these results a bit and what I learned about Eurovision and my musical tastes. Some meta notes about this video. I'm not going to include clips of songs in this video because I don't want to take risks with YouTube's famously arbitrary copyright strike system. But you can find a link to a playlist of my top 30 in the description of this video. Also, remember that here on this channel, we refer to countries by their native names, though I will make sure to display the English names of countries by their native names when they are referred to as such, so don't sweat it if you aren't familiar with native names. Welcome to TwoLambdaPlusBlack. I am Heirua. First, let's talk about how Eurovision works and its history a little. Eurovision is a very old contest. A surprisingly old contest. I was surprised by how old it was. This year's Eurovision will be the 68th Eurovision. Anything that has gone on that long has changed dramatically. And for Eurovision, well, its scale has changed, its presentation has changed, its scoring has changed. But here's the basic premise. Each country sends a musical act to represent them at the contest, which ever since the third Eurovision was limited to one maximally 3-minute long song. There, each act gets performed, and then each country gives points to acts they thought were good according to a set of rules regarding the allocation of points. Starting with the second Eurovision, countries were not allowed to vote for themselves. At the end, the points are tallied up and the winner is crowned. This is interpreted as a victory for both the artist and the country they're representing. Eurovision was originally a competition among Western European countries. Only 7 countries competed in the first Eurovision, But this number slowly grew as closer and closer to all Western European countries started attending Eurovision consistently. After the fall of the Eastern Bloc, most Eastern European countries joined in too, though Yugoslavia was an exception and was in Eurovision well before this. Now, a lot of people have different definitions of what Europe is, but Eurovision eventually expanded well beyond anyone's definition. The latest incredible extension is the inclusion of Australia, who was originally intended as a guest country for a few years, but now is just a mainstay. The set of rules regarding the allocation of points and precisely who is giving points on behalf of a country has changed several times over the years. Most early Eurovisions had each country send musical experts to allocate points on behalf of the country, called a jury vote. In several more recent years, everyone in the country could vote with their phones. In some years, only this vote, called the televote, was used. In some years, individual countries could decide whether they're sending a jury to vote or doing a televote. Most recent years have used the convention of having both a jury vote and a televote per country weighted equally. The most recent scoring rules are that a country picks their 10 favorite songs in order and gives 12 points to their favorite, 10 points to their second favorite, 8 points to their third favorite, 7 to their fourth, 6 to their fifth, 5 to their sixth, 4 to their seventh, 3 to their eighth, 2 to their ninth, and 1 to their 10th. In the jury televote half-half system, each of them assigns a 12, a 10, an 8, and so on. So all in all, 2 sets of 10 assignments per country. It is almost amusing how many times the way Eurovision was scored has changed. So far, it has changed 10 times. 2 of the past scoring systems I think are interesting enough to note. There was once a 9 or 6-3 or 5-3-1 system, where every country had 9 points to distribute, and they had a choice to give either one country all of them, 6 to one country and 3 to another, or 5 to one, 3 to another, and 1 to yet another. It is quite curious that the decision was made that specifically only these 3 partitions of 9 points were allowed, not any other. In another system that Eurovision somehow used, each country rated each other country's entry on a scale from 1 to 5 points. Unlike other systems, this does not have a set total number of points given. Hence, it creates a perverse incentive where if you deflate the scores you give to other countries, you make your country's chances better. In fact, there's prisoner's dilemma dynamics here, right? If all jurors voted honestly, the chances are best that the ratings are perceived as fair, but if everyone deflated everyone else's scores, the direction of the perverse incentive, the more ridiculous the scoring process looks. I'm not sure why whoever was in charge of this particular scoring system change did not see this coming. The footprint of globalization on Eurovision is rather large. Eurovision used to have a rule that each country's song had to have most of its lyrics in the national language of that country. This rule came to odds with the fact that eventually, the number of Europeans that learned the English language ballooned across countries, leading to a bias for English language songs. Eventually, it was clear how large of an advantage the UK and ERA had in the Eurovision contest simply due to the fact that they're allowed to perform in English and other countries were not. So Eurovision eventually abolished this rule and allowed any country to perform a song in any language. To give some statistics about how strong the English language bias was, in the last 7 years before the rule change, 5 of the years Eurovision was won either by the UK or ERA with a song in English. In one of the 2 remaining years, the song that won was basically an instrumental with a sprinkling of lyrics just so that it doesn't violate Eurovision's rules. In the other remaining year, the winning song's title was a loanword, and the song's lyrics referenced many historical figures whose names can be recognized by an English speaker. After the rule change, when any country could submit a song in English, both the UK and ERA never won a single Eurovision again. Also after the rule change, it took 9 years for a song not written in English to win Eurovision, and another 9 years after that for the second such song. This deeply saddens me. I'd like for Eurovision to have a much better showcase of a variety of languages, with songs highlighting their different beauties, but most countries just submit a song in English now, with few deciding to send a song in a different language. I'm, of course, always happy for those few. It's sad that after the rule change, most grasped for the easy advantage of a song being written in English. It's sad that before the rule change, the UK and ERA had such a large advantage because they had the exclusive right to send songs in English. I'm not sure what sort of rule can disincentivize this without being an overbearing rule that disfigures this competition. But I'd like to give a shout out to België, or Belgique, for taking advantage of this rule change by 1 year submitting a song written in the conlang. One of the goals of Eurovision is to unite Europe through music, and it deliberately tries to be an apolitical event, with certain forms of political expression at the event even being explicitly banned. But, of course, how political something is a spectrum, and where there are spectra, well, let's just say that the involvement of politics in Eurovision is long and storied. Various countries have submitted songs that are different degrees of obviously about an ongoing political situation, and countries have submitted songs that are cloaked political jabs at other countries also participating in the contest. Countries have taken various actions with regards to the contest itself due to political issues. Did you know this is a Wikipedia article that exists? Before looking this article up, guess how long it is? If you're too scared to look, don't worry, it's shorter than this article. If you stare into this void long enough, it might reveal to you all the Eurovision incidents that have occurred regarding a certain land between a certain river and a certain sea. Cronyism is often alleged in the casting of votes in the Eurovision Song Contest. In the history of Eurovision voting, many countries clearly vote more frequently for ethno-linguistically similar countries than the average. The countries most frequently accused of this bias are the Nordic countries for each other, former Yugoslavian countries for each other, Romania and Moldova for each other, and most infamously, Kypros and Illada for each other. The UK and ERA are often accused of bias for each other in Eurovision, but if that's actually an effect, it's not that strong. Also, it seems there's quite a large amount of the fanbase that says Azerbaijan used to be really good at Eurovision and lost its skills somewhere, but if you look at voting history, you'd notice that while Turkey and Azerbaijan were in Eurovision, Turkey listed Azerbaijan for top pick every single year, but then Turkey stopped going to Eurovision, and that is nearly precisely when Azerbaijan's Eurovision performance plummeted. Azerbaijan's performance drop is substantially larger than one country's worth of points though, so this isn't the only factor at play. Of course, there's also an important question of whether this bias is due to actual cronyism or due to one's honest musical tastes and affinities, right? One would imagine that already culturally similar countries tend to share opinions on what is good music. For instance, if two countries' languages are similar, well, we've already established how relevant knowing the language of a song seems to be. Whatever is the source of this bias in voting, though, the effect is particularly significant for consideration in light of the fact that each country has the same voting power in Eurovision, regardless of its population. The UK has 67 million people. The 6 countries of former Yugoslavia together have 23 million people. The second has 6 times the voting power of the first. If the UK split into 6 countries and they frequently voted for each other in top slots, how much would Eurovision results have been impacted? Another biasing factor in Eurovision results is performance order. In the history of Eurovision, statistically, later performances tend to do better, and, in particular, whatever performance is ordered second has never won. Note, by the way, that I did not listen to the songs of Eurovision in their actual event performance order, so this is another extra variable. This is of particular concern because whereas performance order used to be randomly selected, it is now not entirely randomly selected, because acts are somewhat ordered to ease logistics of setup, now that the visual performances that most Eurovision attendees care about have often gotten quite elaborate. But what if I told you that, despite all of those biases in the contest, sometimes countries straight up don't want to win? It's Eurovision convention that whoever wins Eurovision hosts the next Eurovision, and often countries don't want the financial and logistical burden of having to host the next Eurovision. Many at least jokingly sometimes say it's best to place second, so that you don't have to host. that's a blush. A country that has won Eurovision disproportionately frequently for its size, gave up on hosting the next Eurovision when it won 2 years in a row, and Ukraine did not host the latest Eurovision for obvious reasons. The UK picked up the bill for the winning country both of these instances. In the latter case, I do imagine they miss hosting the Eurovision by now. Before I get to my picks, I want to talk about song variety. There's a fair variety of music presented in Eurovision, though it's very much not a rigorous variety. Most songs performed in Eurovision lie somewhere between pop and rock, and lots of songs are about love, or getting along, or breakup, or empowerment. You know, what's popular. It's very clear what the general shape of a typical song preferred in Eurovision is. There's a certain set of names of songs that keep popping up in Eurovision again and again, sometimes translated from one language to the next. Names like Tell Me and Don't Forget, and all the standard words you attach to the word love. In the 42nd Eurovision, the random number generator had a good enough sense of humor to place the song titled Goodbye right before the song titled Before Goodbye in the song order. Of course, despite there being a clear standard safe zone of Eurovision song, every once in a while a hatare comes along and performs Hatrid Munsichra. All in all, there's at least enough genre variety in Eurovision for me to feel that the largest barrier to variety is the limiting of songs to 3 minutes. Which, well, when you have over 30 countries participating, what can you do? Anyway, let's move on to my top picks. First of all, my top picks from each Eurovision. In the 38th Eurovision, the winner was In Your Eyes by Niamh Kavanagh, which was not in my top 10. My top pick for the 38th Eurovision was Iemand als Jij by Barbara, which was not in this Eurovision's top 10. In the 39th Eurovision, the winner was Rock and Roll Kids by Paul Harrington and Charlie McGettigan, which I ranked 7th. My top pick for this Eurovision was Bye Bye Baby by Cat Cat, which was not in this Eurovision's top 10. In the 40th Eurovision, the winner was Nocturne by Secret Garden, and for this Eurovision, I agreed, that was also my top pick. In the 41st Eurovision, the winner was The Voice by Imergin, which I ranked 5th. My top pick for this Eurovision was Ning Kaunis on Taivas by Yasmine, which did not make Eurovision's top 10. In the 42nd Eurovision, the winner was Love Shine a Light by Katrina and the Waves, and this was also my top pick. In the 43rd Eurovision, the winner was Diva by Dana International, which I ranked 3rd. My top pick was Mere Lapsed by Koit Tome, which did not make Eurovision's top 10. In the 44th Eurovision, the winner was Take Me to Your Heaven by Charlotte Nilsson, which I ranked 10th. My top pick was Thane Erotas by Marlene, which did not make Eurovision's top 10. In the 45th Eurovision, the winner was Fly on the Wings of Love by the Olsen Brothers, which I ranked 5th. My top pick was Tell Me by August and Thelma, which once again did not make Eurovision's top 10. In the 46th Eurovision, the winner was Everybody by Taneo Padar, Dave Benton, and 2XL, which I did not rank in my top 10. My top pick was Die For You by Antique, which placed 3rd in this Eurovision. In the 47th Eurovision, the winner was I Wanna by Marie N. In this Eurovision, I agreed. That was my top pick too. In the 48th Eurovision, the winner was Every Way That I Can by Sertab Erener, which I did not place in my top 10. My top pick was Dime by Beth, which placed 9th in this Eurovision. In the 49th Eurovision, the winner was Wild Dances by Ruslana, which I ranked 4th. My top pick was Lane Moje by Željko Joksimovic, which placed 2nd in the actual Eurovision results. In the 50th Eurovision, the winner was My Number One by Helena Paparizou, which I did not rank in my top 10. My top pick was Let Me Try by Lumenica Angel and System, which placed 3rd in the actual Eurovision results. In the 51st Eurovision, the winner was Hard Rock Hallelujah by Lordi, which I did not rank in my top 10. My top pick was Alvedansen by Christine Gulbrandsen, which did not even make the top 10 in Eurovision. This is thus the second Eurovision within the time frame I looked at, where my opinion deviated from Eurovision's consensus so much that both my pick was not in Eurovision's top 10, and Eurovision's top pick was not in my top 10. In the 52nd Eurovision, the winner was Molitva by Marija Šerifović, which was a song I really loved too. But unfortunately that year, there was a song I loved even more, which was Cvet z juga by Alenka Gotar, which meant Molitva had to be my number 2 pick this Eurovision. Cvet z juga did not make Eurovision's top 10. And in fact, this Eurovision and the 6 ones after it are, in my eyes, the best era of Eurovision. In this period, the amount of music in Eurovision that I loved was substantially greater than in the periods before or after. In most the instances of Eurovision, there were fewer than 10 songs I found substantially appealing, and I had to look for songs to pad out a top 10. Whereas in the 52nd through 58th Eurovision contests, I generally found myself instead deciding which songs that I loved I'd have to leave out of my top 10. I'm curious if there are explainable underlying reasons for why I particularly enjoyed this era of Eurovision. In the 53rd Eurovision, the winner was Believe by Dima Bilan. I loved this song and it was my number 2 pick, but my number 1 pick had to go to Kele Kele by Sirusho. This song placed 4th at this Eurovision. In the 54th Eurovision, the winner was Fairy Tale by Alexander Rybak. I ranked this song 2nd. What I ranked first was This Is Our Night by Sakis Ruvas, which placed 7th in that Eurovision. In the 55th Eurovision, the winner was Satellite by Lena, which did not make my top 10. My top pick was It's For You by Niamh Kavanagh, which did not make Eurovision's top 10. This is the 3rd time the neither top 10 situation happened. In the 56th Eurovision, the winner was Running Scared by Elle and Nikki, which I ranked 10th. My top pick was Ding Dong by Dana International, which did not make the top 10 in the actual Eurovision results. In the 57th Eurovision, the winner was Euphoria by Lorraine, which I ranked 5th. My top pick was Aphrodisiac by Eleftheria Eleftheriou, which did not make the top 10 in the actual Eurovision results. The 58th Eurovision was easily my favorite Eurovision. There was an entire trove of songs I loved, and for this Eurovision, it was the hardest to pick which of those I had to leave out of my top 10. As you'll see later, no fewer than 6 songs from this Eurovision made it into my overall top 30. Only Teardrops by Emily de Forest won this Eurovision, and I placed it 3rd. My top pick among the splendid set of this Eurovision was Yech Al Leaf by Eyþór Inge. This marks the end of what I view as the best era of Eurovision. In the 59th Eurovision, the winner was Rise Like a Phoenix by Conchita Wurst. This was also my top pick, and also this is the most recent year in which the song that won Eurovision was also my top pick. In the 60th Eurovision, the winner was Heroes by Mons Zelmerlo, which did not make my top 10. My top pick was N'oubliez pas by Lisa Angel, which was not in the top 10 of the actual Eurovision results. This is the 4th time the neither top 10 situation happened. In the 61st Eurovision, the winner was 1944 by Jamala, which I did not rank in my top 10. My top pick was Loin d'ici by Zoe, which did not make Eurovision's top 10. This is thus the 5th time the neither top 10 situation happened. In the 62nd Eurovision, the winner was Amar Pelos Dois by Salvador Suvrol, which I ranked 2nd. My top pick was Requiem by Alma, which did not make the top 10 of the actual Eurovision results. In the 63rd Eurovision, the winner was Toy by Netta, which was not in my top 10. My top pick was Inje by Vanja Radovanovic, which was not in the top 10 of the actual Eurovision results. In fact, it didn't even make the finals. This is the 6th time the neither top 10 situation happened, and not only that, There were only 2 songs in common between the top 10 of the actual Eurovision results and my top 10 picks in the 63rd Eurovision, which was probably the instance in which my opinions most greatly differed from the consensus, more than even the large amount it usually does. In particular, as you'll see, the song that ended up dead last in this Eurovision made my overall top 30. In the 64th Eurovision, Arcade by Duncan Lawrence won. It was not in my top 10. My top pick was Spirit in the Sky by Keinu, which placed 4th in the actual Eurovision results. In the 65th Eurovision, first place went to Ziti e Buoni by Måneskin, which was not in my top 10. My top pick was Karma by Angela Peristeri, which did not make actual Eurovision's top 10. This is the 7th time that situation happened. In the 66th Eurovision, the winner was Stefania by Kalush Orchestra, which was not in my top 10. My top pick was Hold Me Closer by Cornelia Jacobs, which placed 4th in the actual Eurovision results. In the 67th Eurovision, the winner was Tattoo by Lorraine, which was my 2nd pick. My top pick was Queen of Kings by Alessandra, which placed 5th in the actual Eurovision results. And now for my overall top 30. But first, honorable mentions. These 20 songs are my next favorite songs after my top 30, which I'll read through in chronological order. So if I did a top 50 instead of a top 30, these would take places 50th through 31st in some order. Love Shine a Light by Katrina and the Waves, Thane Erotas by Marlene, Dime by Beth, Lane Moje by Žroko Joksimovic, Zowiek Moja by No Name, Let Me Try by Luminica Angel, Fairy Tale by Alexander Rybak, Tilki Ele by Kunkuis Kayat, It's For You by Nyav Kavanagh, Runaway by Sunstroke Project and Oliatira. This is the origin of the Epic Sax Guy meme, by the way. Euphoria by Lorraine, Love Will Set You Free by Engelbert Humperdinck, What If by Dina Garipova, Rise Like a Phoenix by Conchita Wurst, Silent Storm by Carl Espen, N'oubliez pas by Lisa Angel, Ktheutokos by Yonida Maliki, Voila by Bachbacha Pravi, Cha 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 by Carrière, and Tattoo by Lorraine. By the way, Lane Moje and Zowiek Moja were both entries from back when Serbia and Crna Gora were one country. I decided to attribute them and score points for them to whichever modern-day country the origin of the artist is in. I'd like to talk about the song What If a bit, because where to put it in my top lists was one of the hardest decisions in this process for me, because of unusual factors. I really loved the song. It's a moving song about where humanity would be if we could just stop fighting wars and work together for a better world. It's gorgeous. But I can't get fully comfortable with these lyrics because this song was Russia's entry, which jams the song with recent history. And the thing is, none of this is Dina Garipova's fault at all, so I really don't want to factor this into my consideration. But in the end, what I'm rating is my experience, and my experience with this song was uncomfortable. So I relegated this song to my honorable mentions, even though in more of a vacuum, this song probably would have made it quite a bit into my top 30. This difficult decision out of the way, let's move on to my top 30 proper. I'd like to remind you that even though I don't include clips of the songs here, I have a playlist in the description of all the songs in my top 30. If you desire to, you could intersperse listening to the song and to my commentary. 30th is Bulgaria's entry in the 58th Eurovision, Samo Championi by Elica i Stoyan. Within my top 30, this song is unique in that the main reason I put it here is for its energy. This song is simply 3 minutes of boundless enthusiasm, particularly concentrated in the instrumental sections. That's not to say the vocal portions are lacking in energy though. They contribute another factor to the song's hype character. 29th is Shkiparia's entry in the 65th Eurovision, Karma by Angela Peristeri. A highlight of this song for me is the set of varying holds on the word fall in the first line of the chorus, Zoti nuk ma fall, a real powerful hold setting the lamenting tone for the chorus. The last delivery of the chorus is particularly poignant. 28th is Norge's entry in the 51st Eurovision, Alva Dansen by Kristin Gulbrandsen. As for this song, what I really enjoy is the rendition of the fantasy atmosphere painted by its delivery. The song smoothly holds this spirit throughout. 27th is Norge's entry in the 67th Eurovision, Queen of Kings by Alessandra. The beat of this song is nice and catchy, but it's particularly great the way each iteration of the chorus evolves a bit upon the previous pass-through. The eventual adding of "hey" punctuating lines near the end of the song is a great arriving point. I liked the song better if it skipped the introduction and instead replaced it with a soft instrumental, and then did the sudden break into the first singing of "She, Queen of the Kings, running so fast," etc., though. 26th is Belarus's entry in the 58th Eurovision, Soleil by Alena Lanskaya. We're already at the second song of the 58th Eurovision in my top 30. Trust me, there's still many coming. This is the first of several songs in which I'm not sure I can explain any particular specifics of why I enjoy the song. I just find it real good. 25th is Eastland's entry in the 63rd Eurovision, Our Choice by Are Olafsson. Oh boy. As I've mentioned before, the 63rd Eurovision was easily the Eurovision where my opinions were most against the actual Eurovision results. This song was literally dead last in the 63rd Eurovision, and here I am proclaiming it's the 25th best song of the last 30 Eurovisions. Now, I can think of a reason for people to dislike this song. It's simplistically preachy and optimistic enough that it's narmy, and I sort of feel so myself, but, surely that doesn't make this song the worst song of the year. There exists plenty of oversimplistic, what if we all cared for each other songs across Eurovision, and I don't think the other ones are hated as much as this song is. And in this one, frankly, the music is fantastic. I feel moved. I'm defending this song. It gets 25th overall in my book. 24th is Eastland's entry in the 57th Eurovision, Never Forget by Greta Salome and Jonse. This is another song for which I don't think I can explain any specifics for why I enjoy it. It's just a banger to me. I think the intervening portions that seem to be in Dorian mode is one of the contributions to the aesthetic of the song, though, so I can name possibly one factor of it. 23rd is Srbia's entry in the 57th Eurovision, Nie Ljubavstvar by Željko Joksimović. Now, online, it seems most places translate the title of this song as Love is Not a Thing, but I went to confirm this with an actual Serb who informed me Love is Not an Object would be a more appropriate translation. The song begins with sublime gentle beauty, among the finest crafted I've heard through Eurovision, but it eventually escalates into a far more passionate delivery that takes the melody home. I do wish the song had a somewhat different ending. I find the last couple of measures to be too starkly different in character from the rest of the song, but it is still quite convincing. 22nd is Russia's entry in the 53rd Eurovision, Believe by Dima Bilan. This song won the 53rd Eurovision, delivering Russia its only Eurovision victory up to date, and this is the first instance so far of a song in my top 30 being an actual Eurovision winner. Now, this is a great motivational song. Usually I'd consider something just telling people to believe too corny, but this song is well made enough to make it convincing. Yes, Dima, I believe in you too. 21st is Latvia's entry in the 47th Eurovision, I Wanna by Maria Naumova. This was also a Eurovision winner, and believe it or not, this song almost didn't make it into the Eurovision Song Contest. It was a replacement. I think I enjoy both the rhythm and the structure of the song. Its parts are pieced together nice and neatly. 20th is Suomi's entry in the 39th Eurovision, Bye Bye Baby by Cat Cat. The song is intense with its lines and makes a convincing delivery of its seriousness in its sentiment. 19th is San Marino's entry in the 58th Eurovision, Chrysalide Vola by Valentina Monetta. Yes, there is a San Marino entry that made my top 30. This song musically self-demonstrates its story. It begins stately as a cocoon, sounding as if looking forward to a flying future. After the tempo change, the song really takes flight and continuously ascends. And beyond this, it is particularly neat that the subject matter of this song concerns butterflies because the 58th Eurovision was butterfly-themed. 18th is Denmark's entry in the 63rd Eurovision, Higher Ground by Rasmussen. This song's lyrics urge you to be the first to say no to war and turn around and refuse to fight, referencing the medieval story of Magnus Erlendsson, the Viking who refused to fight. I really love the musical textures of this song, and in fact, I think I would have ranked this song a few places more ahead, but I'm going to have to take issue with the fact that the apparently Icelandic part of its lyrics was actually made up and not real Icelandic. I would not have minded it as much if it was an honest mistake, but one of the singers commented on the situation saying, quote, "It is a positive because we would never have received so much attention if it had been correct." So I'm going to have to say that intentionally getting something wrong because more people will pay attention to you deserves being knocked down a few places in the ranking. 17th is France's entry in the 62nd Eurovision, Requiem by Alma. Now, when a song is called a requiem, you expect something unrelentingly sorrowful, or at least solemn. And this song has a special charm to it because it's actually quite upbeat for what you'd expect, but still regularly presents some down overtones within its construction. And there's a neatness in that. 16th is Denmark's entry in the 58th Eurovision, Only Teardrops by Emily de Forest. This song won the 58th Eurovision, which, as I mentioned before, was easily my favorite Eurovision. Unfortunately, in my books, it's only third among the songs of that Eurovision, even though it's already a breathtakingly beautiful song. By the way, the flute is a crucial part of what makes this song great. I actually tried listening to a cover of the song without the flute lines, and it's not nearly as good. The combination of the flute, the drums, and DeForest singing combine to produce a lovely creation. 15th is Norge's entry in the 64th Eurovision, Spirit in the Sky by Keinu. I love this song so much. The three extremely contrasted voices make for a truly amazing combination, particularly highlighted during the lines, "I see your spirit in the sky," when northern lights are dancing, "Hello Eloila," where the delivery feels like you start out looking towards the sky, then are jolted up into it for a few seconds of splendor, and then snap back down to earth. It's quite a ride. The song has lyrics in both English and Northern Sami, and one of the things the song alludes to is the struggle of the Sami people indigenous to northern Scandinavia through historical oppression, which incidentally, one of the members of Keinu is a member of. 14th is Trnagora's entry in the 63rd Eurovision, Inje by Vanja Radovanovic. Remember when I talked about my pick for 25th, our choice, and how I couldn't disagree more with the actual results of the 63rd Eurovision? Here's another instance. This was one of the worst performing songs at that Eurovision. And sure, it wasn't dead last like our choice was, but only 3 songs did worse than it did. What's wrong with this song? It's a beautiful masterpiece melodically and structurally. I'm so sad that so few people seem to appreciate Inje. But I'll be here, insisting this is not just a song that was worthy, but one of the best entries to Eurovision ever. 13th is Hayastan's entry in the 53rd Eurovision, Kele Kele by Sirusho. To my ears, this is one of the catchiest songs in Eurovision ever. The unique instrumentation really does a lot for it, and most of the long notes in the lyrics are delicately contoured. 12th is Tyrkia's entry in the 43rd Eurovision, Unutamazsın by Tüzmein. It is one of the best done, sad songs. The delivery is overflowing with emotion. You almost expect the singer to cry a bit at the end. 11th is Österreich's entry in the 61st Eurovision, Loin de Sea by Zoe. Through Eurovision's history, there have been several songs that try to paint and describe a fantasy land, but Loin de Si does it the best. The atmosphere of the song really feels like you're drifting in a faraway place, at least by the last part of the song, which takes you there if anything. 10th is Elada's entry in the 54th Eurovision. This is Our Night by Sakis Ruvas. Alright, we're in the top 10 now. What can I say? This song convinces me that this is our night. Not to mention, that tone painting on Fly to the Top is, well, top notch. 9th is Suomi's entry in the 52nd Eurovision. Leave Me Alone by Hanna Pakarinen. The way this song builds up is powerfully moving. The power in this song really meshes with the rhythm of the chorus, making it very musically convincing. Also, I've gotta go crazy just to stay sane. What a good line. 8th is Sverige's entry in the 66th Eurovision. Hold Me Closer by Cornelia Jacobs. This song is so much for me. From its incredibly gentle first lines to its culminating last verses, it is heart-wrenching in beauty. The beauty almost makes you forget the song's about a breakup. That might even be the point of the song. 7th is Elada's entry in the 57th Eurovision, Aphrodisiac by Eleftheria Eleftheriou. The lyrical and instrumental lines of this song are both really great. A highlight of this song to me is the string of O's that feel levitational. This makes Elada the only country represented in my top 10 more than once. 6th is Norge's entry in the 40th Eurovision, Nocturne by Secret Garden. 3 minutes of walking pace, smooth, delicate, violin-led night music. It's pristine. It's the pure call of nature. 5th is Aisti's entry in the 43rd Eurovision, Mere Lapsid by Koit Tolme. This work sounds magical. The music paints a great journey, and of course, getting to hear my favorite chord progression, major 6, major 7, minor 1, though I guess in this case, major 4, major 5, minor 6, since this song is ultimately in major, will always win some favors from my ears. 4th is Serbia's entry in the 52nd Eurovision, Molitva by Marija Šerifović, and is the highest ranking song that actually won Eurovision on my list. This song is so much. The power in the second iteration of the chorus is magnificent, culminating in a long-held note that rings over mountains. In most years of Eurovision, this would easily have been my favorite song of that year. But in the 52nd Eurovision, there was still one song I ranked even higher up. 3rd is Israel's entry in the 58th Eurovision, Hak Bishvilo by Mohan Mazoch. The passion in this song is overrunning. The accumulated energy by the end is self-propelling, particularly after the high note. I was shocked to learn this song didn't make the finals. I'm not sure what the Eurovision audience did not like about it. Though, incredibly, despite this song being 3rd overall in my rankings, it is not the song I ranked highest among the songs of the 58th Eurovision either. Ég á líf, yfir við leikas víf. Ég á líf, vegna þín. Þegar tímir blæs, yfir fjöllin há ég klíf. Ég á líf, vegna þín. 2nd is Eastland's entry in the 58th Eurovision, Ég á líf by Eyþór Inge. This is honestly quite a simple song, and yet it achieves so much despite its simplicity, in a way that kind of reflects its lyrics. The song's title is Ég á líf, I have life, and it goes from here to talking about climbing over mountains. And well, the last pass-through of the chorus is the one that scales the mountain, with the power and the counterpoint. Mój belý svět, mój dálný svět, daj vrni se, mój body zpět. Zavědnovce moje, W żywleniu twoje svet zjuga blizu morza się, ja czekam te. First is Slovenia's entry in the 52nd Eurovision, Svet zjuga by Alenka Gotar. Svet zjuga is my pick for the best song of all 1029 songs I listened to. Now, every single second of this song is great, but the most glorious point in the song is the third time through the chorus, when the chorus itself goes into the background and Gotar sings a magnificent countervailing line. That is such a moment. It's songs like this for which I wish it was not capped by 3 minutes. By the way, this song that I considered the best in the actual contest only ranked 15th within its own Eurovision. It deserved much better. Going back through my top 30 and my thoughts on them, I have to say that often what I enjoy in songs comprises feelings that can't really be put into words, what the words don't do justice in describing. And as a result, I think oftentimes my description is lacking, and honestly, a lot of these words could also probably be applied to a lot of songs not on my list that just didn't strike me at the right resonance like these did. 2 of the songs I outright could not even describe what I liked. But that's just part of the wonder of music, fortunately or unfortunately. It just operates on a different dimension of sensation. Alright, so remember how I rated my top 10 songs from each of the last 30 Eurovisions using the current Eurovision vote scoring instructions? I want to compare them to what actual Eurovision results look like. So what I could do is to reapply the Eurovision scale to the top 10 by total points in each of the last 30 Eurovision song contests, which I guess I'll call the Eurovision Aggregate score. And then I could add them up and compare them to see for which countries I tended to enjoy their entries more than Eurovision on average did, and what countries' entries I tended to enjoy less. Using the aggregate calculation on the actual Eurovision results, the countries that accumulate the most points are Sverige with 144 points, Russia with 99 points, Ukraine with 92 points, Norge with 88 points, Italia with 76 points, Elada with 64 points, Eesti with 61 points, Denmark with 61 points, Turkey with 60 points, and the United Kingdom with 60 points. Adding up points for my picks, my top 10 countries are Norge with 120 points, Sverige with 100 points, Eesti with 89 points, Suomi with 80 points, Kypros with 76 points, Elada with 70 points, Denmark with 59 points, Hrvatska with 58 points, Iceland with 56 points, and Eira with 54 points. So, as mentioned before, it turns out my opinions are drastically different from the actual Eurovision results, and in particular, I do seem to have regional affinities. I mean, all 5 Nordics are in my top 10 countries. All 6 Nordics even, if you do it that way. In my top 10 are 2 countries for which my total score is drastically higher than the Eurovision aggregate score. Namely, I ended up giving 80 points to Suomi, as opposed to 27 points for the Eurovision aggregate score, and I ended up giving 76 points to Kypros, as opposed to 31 points for the Eurovision aggregate score. This is probably a good point at which to disclaim that prior to Eurovision, I have for a long time already had a cultural affinity for these 3 countries. In particular, with regards to relevance to music, more than half of my favorite bands are from this area. In fact, my favorite band, Nightwish, is from this little town here, Kite. So, could I potentially have had biases coming into this? Biases could be subconscious, so it's hard to know if some may have creeped in anyway. But I tried my utmost to look at each song as it is, though I can think of one instance where I absolutely could not ignore the country the song was representing. Honestly, though, I think I probably did very well at avoiding the influence of biases, given that I absolutely love Sverige as a country, yet I gave them an entire 44 points fewer than the Eurovision aggregate did. And of course, I should be clear that by biases, I mean lack of neutrality before listening to songs, as opposed to my actual musical tastes aligning very well with those of the Nordics, which this tallying helps confirm. What absolutely can't have been from bias, though, is that apparently I really enjoy Balkan and Greek music, something of which I've known almost nothing about before Eurovision. I don't know, would Greeks be more offended if I said Balkan or if I said Balkan and Greek when referring to a group that includes them? Would Slovenians be offended that I'll be giving consideration to this categorical quandary to the Greeks and not to them? This could be a whole rabbit hole. But this links back to the prior discussed issue of cronyism in voting. As mentioned earlier, 3 groups of countries most frequently accused of cronyism in voting in Eurovision are the Nordics, the former Yugoslavian countries, and Elada and Kypros. And here I am, giving data points towards the musical tastes alternatives theory of Eurovision block voting. I am pretty sure there is no Nordic, Balkan, or Greek blood in me, and yet I seem to significantly prefer their music. You're welcome for my help to vindicate you, Nordics, Balkans, and Greeks. Even though my opinions were generally significantly deviated from the actual results, there were countries for which my opinion closely matched actuals, namely Romania and Serbia. So what I like about songs from them seems to better match up with what most people enjoy in them. For many countries, my opinions did not come close to actual results at all, most wildly Eastland and Suomi, where it's almost as if the more unpopular an entry from that country was, the more I liked it. I'd like to talk about the phenomenon of 0-point songs a bit. In most scoring systems Eurovision has used, it is possible for a song to go to Eurovision and walk back with 0 points. This is a rare occurrence because in modern Eurovision scoring systems, getting 0 points requires that every other country not list your song in its top 10. Though I'd posit the distribution of songs getting 0 points is substantially affected by the cronyism factor discussed earlier, and that certain countries are much more vulnerable to getting 0 points than others. Some Eurovision fans like to discuss how much they think songs that have gotten 0 points deserved it. And this is where I'll mention that there were 3 instances in the last 30 Eurovisions when a song got 0 points at Eurovision, but I listed the song in my top 10 for the year, thus giving it points in my book. One was I Am Yours by the Make-Makes, Österreich's entry in the 60th Eurovision, which I ranked 10th, thus giving it 1 point. Incidentally, this specific 0 points situation must have been particularly hard to bear, because it's the only time in Eurovision history when the country hosting Eurovision got 0 points. Another was Boys Do Cry by Marius Bear, Schweiz's entry to the 66th Eurovision, which I ranked 9th that year, thus giving it 2 points. Though I'll note Boys Do Cry was a song from after the rule switch to 50-50 jury televote voting, and Boys Do Cry only got 0 points from the televote, not the jury vote. The third song? You know what the third song is already. It's Our Choice. Yes, that was a 0-point song. Once again, it only got 0 points in the televote and not the jury vote, though its jury vote was still abysmal. So yes, a 0-point song is in my top 30. Our Choice, not one country's populace would grant you 1 point, but you get 8 points from me. Overall, I think I'd say most songs that got 0 points did not deserve it, and were good enough someone ought to have thrown them some pity points. There's 2 songs I'd say definitely deserve to get 0 points. Embers by James Newman, and I Don't Feel Hate by Jendrik, both entries to the 65th Eurovision, by the UK and Deutschland respectively. Both those songs were disasters. I guess it's worth noting that I Don't Feel Hate only got 0 points from the televote, but got points from the jury vote, while Embers is the only song since the beginning of the 50-50 system to get 0 points from both the jury vote and the televote. True 0 points, if you will. On the topic of 0 points, there were 4 countries that got 0 points in the Eurovision Aggregate statistic that I defined above: Andorra, Monaco, San Marino, and Slovenska. In other words, these 4 countries never made it to the top 10 in the actual results of any of the last 30 Eurovision contests. Andorra was the only country that I never ranked in a top 10 for a year. San Marino, of course, had an entry that actually made it into my overall top 30. You may have noticed that I haven't yet mentioned any of the so-called joke entries in Eurovision. It's a long-established tradition in Eurovision. As for the joke entries, well, I dislike most of them. There were 3 joke entries that I enjoyed. Wolves of the Sea by Pirates of the Sea, Cake to Bake by Arzem Nieki, and Give That Wolf a Banana by Subwoofer. On the other hand, if I were to say there's a song that didn't get 0 points but deserved to get 0 points, it'd be Irlande 12 Point. This is, of course, the joke entry of joke entries, and frankly, it is not the least bit convincing of deserving sympathy points. I guess credit to it for getting Eurovision to change its voting to less incentivized joke entries, maybe? It still could have been a better delivery for the points it intended to make. One nice result of listening to 1029 Eurovision songs is that I ended up checking out some of the other works of artists of songs I enjoyed. There are 2 songs outside of Eurovision that I'm particularly happy to have gotten directed to. One of them is Ime Moje by Jelena Tomašević, whose entry in the 53rd Eurovision, Oro, almost made my top 50. I actually enjoyed Ime Moje even more than Oro. Another is Knights of Thunder by Keinu, the group that performed Spirit in the Sky. It comes with an excellent music video, link in the description. Wolves of the Sea led me to the Ailstorm cover of the song, which I think I enjoy even more than the original. And of course, I discovered that I never knew I loved the music of the Balkans, of which I will be listening to a lot more. There's many ways this journey through the last 30 Eurovisions was very worthwhile for me. I'd like to close up by asking, what are some things I hope to see happen in a future Eurovision Song Contest? And I mean specific one-time occurrences, not including fixing logistical unfairnesses like performance order issues. Okay, first of all, I want to see the UK send an entry in a language that's not English. It'll be glorious. Do it. Second, there's a lot of countries I'm rooting for having a big hit, but most of all, I think I want to see Česko have one. I know it's a country with a neat, unique musical spirit that I'd love to see shine. After all, back in the days of classical music, this is the country that gave us Antonín Dvořák and Bedřich Smetana. That, of course, far from easily translates to 3-minute pop and rock, but surely the country has much further they can go than peaking at 6th. And last of all, I think something that would be neat and heartwarming is if the 6 countries of former Yugoslavia all sent songs fitting one theme, some ear. This, of course, would require either coincidence or each national contest having a prescribed theme, since most countries decide on which song to send to Eurovision via an internal contest. So it's quite unlikely. But given various forms of bitterness that still remain in many ways in the countries after the tragic breakup of Yugoslavia, it's nice that the Eurovision Song Contest seems to be a place where all those countries still love each other. And given that, it would be a great opportunity to send 6 songs that are all part of a larger whole. And they'd definitely be songs I look forward to, because history suggests I will enjoy them. Alright, you've made it through my longest video so far. I'd like to thank all of my patrons for sticking by me through tough times. And, as always, remember to love the night.